My name is Emily Carter. I'm 33, and for most of my life, I've been the family's emergency contact, unpaid accountant, and emotional shock absorber. If my mother could sum me up in one word, it would be responsible. If I could sum up my family in one word, it would be expensive. I work as an operations manager for a national logistics firm based in Denver, Colorado. Shipments, spreadsheets, deadlines. Before we get to the dinner that ended everything, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I read every comment, and I want to know who's here with me tonight. The Crystal Suite was designed to make you feel important, but mostly it just made you feel trapped. It was a private dining room tucked into the back of the most pretentious hotel downtown, wrapped in silver gray drapes that smelled faintly of old perfume and money. My parents, Robert and Diane, had insisted on this exact venue for their 32nd wedding anniversary. They wanted intimacy, they said. What they really wanted was a captive audience. I arrived 20 minutes early to make sure the place settings were right, and more importantly, to settle the bill in advance. $1,180. That was the price of admission for the night. I handed my credit card to the maitre d' with the same detached efficiency I use when approving a freight manifest. No pleasure, no resentment, just completion. When my family arrived, they came in like a cloud of noise and cologne. My older brother, Michael, wore a tailored blazer that cost more than his car, a car that was, unsurprisingly, still financed despite his latest, almost funded startup. My younger brother, Evan, 27 and perpetually in school, looked rumpled and relaxed in the way only the youngest is allowed to be. And then there were my parents. Diane didn't walk into a room so much as claim it. She kissed Michael on both cheeks, fussed over Evan's hair, and then handed me her coat without looking at me. "Check the wine list, Emily," she said, sliding into the head chair. "Michael's had a big week. He deserves something good." I knew Michael hadn't had a big week. He'd had a bad one. I'd paid his attorney retainer 3 days earlier, but I said nothing. I opened the menu. For the next hour, I ate a steak I paid for while listening to my parents narrate an alternate reality where their sons were brilliant, driven men on the brink of success, and I was simply the background support staff. Across the candlelight, my mother watched Michael with a kind of desperate devotion. For years, I had labeled her behavior as favoritism. Sitting there, watching her praise the son who drained her resources while ignoring the daughter who supplied them, I realized it was something else entirely. My competence threatened her narrative. Every bill I paid, every problem I quietly solved, was proof that her golden children were failing. She didn't demean me because I lacked value. She did it because my stability collapsed the illusion she needed to survive. I was the mirror she wanted shattered. Dessert arrived. Champagne followed. My father stood first, offering a rambling toast about endurance and sacrifice. But when he sat, Diane rose effortlessly, diamonds flashing at her wrist, diamonds I had insured. "To my boys," she said, voice trembling on cue. "Michael, for your vision, Evan, for your heart, you are the soul of this family." She sipped, then turned to me. The warmth vanished. "And Emily," she said, loud enough for the staff to hear, "thank you for handling the logistics tonight. It's unfortunate you're so transactional you can't recognize real love, but we do appreciate the payment." The room went still. The hum of the ventilation system filled the silence. Michael smiled into his glass. I looked at my mother and, for the first time, felt nothing. No tears, no heat, just the soft, final click of something locking into place. The agreement was over. I opened my laptop, lifted one finger to get the waiter's attention, and began to work. The screen glowed, familiar and calm. Cancel recurring transfer. Confirm. Cancel automatic mortgage contribution. Confirm. Confirm. It took 45 seconds to dismantle the financial scaffolding I'd spent 3 years quietly maintaining for them. "Ma'am," the waiter said, hovering near my shoulder, his voice careful. "Please cancel the prepayment on my card," I replied evenly. "Bring the check to the table, center." I closed the laptop with a soft click. My mother was still smiling, that brittle, pitying smile, waiting for me to break, to apologize for being cold, to perform remorse. She expected tears. She expected a scene. She did not expect silence. The waiter returned and set the black leather folder on the white tablecloth. It sat there like an unexploded device. I opened it, glanced at the total, $1,212. I slid the itemized receipt back into place and set the folder down. "Perfect," I said, meeting my mother's eyes. "Then don't ask me for any more money." I stood, smoothed my dress, picked up my purse, and walked out without looking back. The hallway carpet swallowed my footsteps. Outside, the night air felt clean. The drive home blurred into streetlights and quiet. My hands stayed steady on the wheel while my mind audited the ledger of my own compliance. It wasn't just dinner. It was the $31,000 I wired 2 years earlier to cover my father's failed investment, money he promised was a loan, money I never saw again. It was the $3,600 that left my account every month to cover the mortgage on their 4-bedroom colonial outside the city, a house they claimed they couldn't downsize because it held too many memories. It was the rescues from Michael's collapsing ventures and Evan's tuition for degrees he abandoned halfway through. I had been feeding coins into a slot machine rigged to never pay out, convinced if I just tried one more time, the lights would flash and they'd finally see me. The machine had always been broken. That night, I stopped playing. The aftermath wasn't quiet. It was a coordinated campaign. By the time I pulled into my garage, my phone was vibrating across the passenger seat. My father first. "You humiliated your mother. Call us and fix this." Then Michael, "Are you serious? We can't cover that bill. It's their anniversary. Why are you being selfish?" Then a notification. My mother had posted online, vague enough to deny, sharp enough to wound. "Ungrateful children forget where they come from, praying for clarity and forgiveness. Sometimes money changes people." I stared at the glow in my dark living room. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the bill, about control, about the story. I switched modes. The hurt daughter powered down. The operations manager took over. I sat at my desk, aligned pens, squared papers, and opened a new spreadsheet. I titled it Severance. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I executed. Utilities first. My name was on their accounts because my credit was dependable. I requested immediate removal of liability effective next cycle. Then the bank. I froze the joint emergency account they drained repeatedly for non-emergencies like club dues and networking dinners. Then I drafted an email to my attorney, Laura, an old friend with a reputation for forensic precision. "Laura, I need full financial separation from my parents. I want an audit. I want to know my exposure if they default. I want out." I sent it at 1 a.m. The silence afterwards wasn't empty. It was clean. 2 days later, Laura called, her voice all business. "Come to my office now. Bring the mortgage statements." An hour later, I sat in the glass conference room as she slid a document across the table. Not a spreadsheet, a public filing. "I ran a title search," she said, "just to be thorough. I found this." It was a quitclaim deed. I scanned the page, eyes snagging on the dates and names. 2 weeks ago," I said. Laura nodded. "They transferred ownership to your brothers, left the mortgage as is, knowing your payment was keeping it current." The room seemed to exhale. It wasn't favoritism. It wasn't neglect. It was strategy. They'd secured the asset for the golden children and tethered me to the liability. They planned to let me finish paying off a home I would never own, never inherit, never benefit from. They drank the wine I bought and toasted my transactional nature while holding the secret that they'd already mortgaged my future. "This is fraud," I said. Laura's smile was thin. "And the bank doesn't know. Most loans have a due on sale clause. Transfer without permission can trigger immediate repayment." I studied the signatures. They thought I was still the safety net. "They think you're the mark," Laura said. I stood. I didn't feel angry. Anger burns hot and fast. This was cold. This was absolute zero. "Draft the letter," I told her. but don't send it to the bank yet. I want to deliver the news myself." 3 weeks later, the delinquency notice was issued. It went to their house, not mine, but the alert still hit my phone because my email remained linked to the mortgage portal as a courtesy contact. Payment past due. Foreclosure proceedings imminent. I didn't forward it. I didn't call. I waited. They showed up on a Tuesday evening. I was sitting on my beige linen sofa, reading in a room that was quiet, orderly, and entirely mine. The doorman called to say my family was in the lobby. "Send them up," I said. "Escort only." When I opened the door, they looked like people displaced from a life they could no longer fund. Diane's hair had lost its practiced polish. Robert's face looked slack, older. Michael and Evan stood behind them, shifting, staring anywhere but at me. "We need to talk," Robert said, reaching for authority that no longer answered him. "The bank called. They're threatening the house." "I know," I said. I didn't invite them in. I stayed in the doorway, a boundary made physical. "You can't let this happen," Diane pleaded, stepping closer. Her eyes were red, the performance precise. "That house is our legacy. How can you be so cold?" "You stop paying," Michael said, finally finding his voice now that his inheritance was at risk. "You can't just walk away from a mortgage you agreed to." I looked at his wrist, a new watch, flashy enough to cover a payment. "I didn't stop paying my mortgage," I said calmly. I reached for the manila folder on the entry table. I'd prepared it the day after my meeting with Laura. I handed it to my father. "What's this?" he asked. "A copy of the quitclaim deed you filed last month." The hallway seemed to lose oxygen. Diane went rigid. Michael stopped shifting. Evan finally met my eyes, the realization settling in. "You transferred the title to Michael and Evan," I continued, my voice level. "You legally severed your ownership. I was paying to help my parents. My obligation ended the moment you signed that paper." "We were protecting the asset," Robert said, sweating. "You were securing it for them while leaving the liability with me," I corrected. "You wanted me to pay for a house I would never own." I looked at my brothers. "Congratulations, you're homeowners, which means the foreclosure is yours, asset and debt." "We can't afford that," Evan said, his voice breaking. "Then sell it or lose it. It's not my problem." Diane grabbed my arm. "You're destroying this family over money, over a dinner." I looked at her hand, then at her eyes. There was no love there, only panic. The moment the host detaches, the parasites starve. "I didn't destroy anything," I said, removing her hand. "I turned on the lights." I stepped back and closed the door. The deadbolt slid home. The sound was final. The fallout was quiet. Without my monthly payment, the mortgage failed. The bank didn't accept guilt or loyalty as currency. The foreclosure moved forward. 6 months later, the 4-bedroom colonial sold at auction. My parents didn't end up on the street. They moved into a modest 2-bedroom rental across town. Adequate, affordable. Michael and Evan stopped visiting once the inheritance vanished. Michael left the state chasing another opportunity. Evan moved in with a girlfriend and stopped returning calls. I wasn't the problem. I was the glue, the artificial gravity holding their system together. When I stepped away, they drifted apart into the vacuum of their own choices. As for me, I'm back on my beige linen sofa on a quiet Tuesday morning. Sunlight fills the room, dust floats, my phone is silent, my account is healthy, my calendar is open. I used to think walking away would break me, that the silence would hurt. But the silence isn't empty, it's full of peace, full of the knowledge that I am not an appliance, I am not a utility, I am a person. I opened my laptop, not to pay a bill, but to book a flight. 2 weeks, solo. This wasn't revenge. I didn't want to hurt them. I wanted to stop hurting myself. If you've ever been the invisible one, valued only for what you provide, know this. You're allowed to resign. You're allowed to close the account. You're allowed to be transactional when the only transaction offered is exploitation. If this story resonated, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends who need to hear it, and comment your perspective or the key lesson you took away. I read every single one.